expected to be swift and decisive had become a stalemate. An unbroken chain of trenches stretched from the Alps to the North Sea. About 25,000 miles of trenches were collectively built by all sides during the conflict. And soon, machine guns alongside artillery became the rulers of the battlefield. In some sections, there were over 30 machine guns per kilometer of the front. The primary reason the machine gun caused trench warfare was that the weapon was useful pretty much only for defense. They were heavy and crew-served with 4 to 8 men working around the gun, so you couldn't quite go Rambo style, firing the Maxim from your hip during an advance. However, this was about to change exactly because of that, when new versions of machine guns emerged specifically for this purpose. But we'll get to that in a moment. Okay, so let's first explain how machine guns were actually used in practice during World War I. The standard became placing machine gun nests every 250 yards along the front line trenches, each with interlocking fields of fire. These guns were positioned behind multiple lines of barbed wire, fronted by ground cleared of any cover, and protected in concrete-reinforced pillboxes if possible. Now, when firing in sustained bursts, the rounds don't follow the same path due to vibration, ammunition variation, and atmospheric conditions. Bullets spread into a cone-shaped pattern, going from the muzzle, creating an elliptical area called the beaten zone. This was an oval approximately 2 meters wide where bullets impact. When the gun is positioned so this cone of fire is nearly parallel to the ground, at ranges up to 600 meters, machine guns could create what was called grazing fire. That means bullets traveling no higher than a man's head for the entire distance from gun to target. Anything within this zone that stood upright would be hit. Groups of guns positioned to interlock their fire ensured overlapping coverage, denying safe access to areas of the battlefield extending 3 kilometers or more. This interlocking fire pattern meant that even if one machine gun was knocked out, the others on either side could still cover the space between trenches. Attackers found themselves shot at from multiple directions simultaneously, making it impossible to find cover. Enfilade fire, which means shooting along the length of enemy formations rather than at their front, proved particularly devastating, because each bullet had the chance to hit multiple men in a file. Wire was laid out at night in belts 15 meters deep or more to slow and funnel infantry advances, ensuring attackers spent maximum time exposed to machine gun fire. The mud only made everything worse. Artillery bombardments had torn up the land, and rain created thick mud, sometimes deep enough that soldiers could become stuck and drown. The dominance of the defensive machine gun was the single greatest contributing factor to the grinding attrition and staggering casualties of the First World War. While artillery caused about 60 to 70% of Western Front casualties, machine guns were responsible for an estimated 20 to 40% of battlefield deaths. So, how did life for the machine gun crew actually look like? Well, not quite relaxing or anywhere safe, but one thing is sure, it was exciting. And by exciting, I mean terrifying, with severe post-traumatic stress disorder if you were lucky enough to somehow survive the war. The crew consisted of the gunner, who aimed and fired. The loader sat to his right, feeding belts into the gun. Additional men carried ammunition, water, and spare parts, and helped with whatever was needed around the gun. When water was short, soldiers urinated into the gun to keep it going. 2 entire infantry companies were assigned simply to ferry ammunition for guns during extended firing. Barrel changing was required about every hour during prolonged operations. Guns demanded constant cleaning and attention, and stoppages had to be cleared as quickly as possible because every second the gun is not firing gives the enemy time to come closer. And under trench conditions, with mud, dirt, and debris everywhere, keeping a machine gun functioning was a constant battle in itself. Machine gunners and their positions were the highest priority targets on the battlefield. Artillery bombardments specifically targeted them before attacks, while snipers tried to take out gunners or disable guns during the attack. Infantry assault tactics were devised specifically to destroy machine gun nests, and grenades became the primary tool for this. German stormtroopers had grenadiers, soldiers carrying only hand grenades for taking out machine gun positions, trying to come to them from the sides or rear. The British created the first tanks specifically to counter barbed wire and take out the machine guns, so you see just how much they were bothering all sides. And all while everyone tried to kill them, the crew of machine gun had to keep firing at any cost in order to keep their line from falling when under heavy attack. The British Machine Gun Corps earned its horrible nickname because of this. Of the 170,500 men, 62,000 became casualties, so the Corps got called the Suicide Club. They served well in advance of the front line as part of defense in-depth tactics, making them particularly vulnerable. They were stationary targets exposed to everything from artillery to rifle fire, and replacements stepped into positions knowing full well that their predecessors had died in the same spot, with them now facing the same odds. Germany developed the Sappenpanzer trench armor for their gunners. The armor proved effective against low-velocity fragments and shrapnel, though it offered no protection against direct rifle fire at close range. Now imagine how horrible it looked when an attack began and machine gunners opened frantic continuous fire to break off the enemy charge. He is literally firing until he gets shot, at which point the next man takes over the gun immediately. He knows that this moment would come, and that someone before him came to replace the fallen gunner, and most likely someone is about to replace him as well any moment now, and he's going to be replaced by someone else when killed. It's just terrible if you think about it. Machine gun warfare devastated both those behind the guns and those charging against them. Individual machine gunners killed many hundreds of men advancing before their guns, wrecking the soldier mentally and emotionally after hours of unrelenting slaughter. Even if you survive, you have to live with mowing down hundreds of people, looking at them on the open ground and watching how they fall as you shoot. There's no time to think about that in the moment, but there are going to be some long thinking nights and dreams for the rest of your life. And these were the quote-unquote lucky ones who survived the war. As discussed earlier, no one could find a way to make machine guns effective in offense. But the war was now going on for quite some time, and all sides were trying to break the deadlock. Armies began looking for ways to make them more mobile, so this brilliant defensive weapon could also be used in attack roles. Germany attempted a solution with the MG0815. They added a pistol grip, rifle-style buttstock, and bipod while reducing weight to about 48 pounds with ammunition and water. But after testing it in combat, it wasn't looking promising. Then came Colonel Isaac Newton Lewis with a design for a new air-cooled machine gun. It had a distinctive wide barrel shroud that drew cool air across the barrel after each shot, a radiator principle that eliminated the need for heavy water jackets. The gun weighed 28 pounds, roughly 1/4 the weight of water-cooled designs, with a 47 or 97 round Pan magazine atop the receiver. See how Tommy Shelby used it in his firefight with the Italian mafia. Jokes aside, it was among the first machine guns truly portable where one man could carry and fire the weapon, though a two-man team was standard practice. This enabled new rush tactics for infantry assault, where soldiers could fire from the hip while advancing and provide mobile fire support during offensive operations. Then we have some other not-so-successful designs. And when I say less successful, I mean almost horrible. The French tried to achieve this with the Chauchat, which was actually the war's most produced automatic weapon. But that didn't mean it was good. The Chauchat's reliability problems became infamous. The 20-round curved magazine was made of thin stamped metal and open on one side to show the ammunition count, which let mud into the mechanism and caused about 75% of all stoppages. It fired at a low rate of about 250 rounds per minute, so it was more controllable. However, under ideal conditions, the gun jammed after about 300 rounds. Under trench conditions, jams came after roughly 100 rounds. So not quite something you'd like to trust with your life. American forces received versions of the Chauchat converted for the 30-06 cartridge that were even worse with reliability, if that's even possible. However, the Americans were lucky to have one of the greatest gun designers ever to live, the legendary John Moses Browning. When tasked with creating a weapon for this new walking fire concept everyone was talking about, he created something that went on to be used extensively even in the next global war and beyond. The BAR, or Browning Automatic Rifle. About 3 pounds lighter than the Chauchat, this gas-operated air-cooled design fired the powerful 30-06 cartridge from a 20-round detachable box magazine at about 500 rounds per minute, with both semi-automatic and fully automatic fire modes. It was much more reliable and a far better design, and it was kept as a highly guarded secret so it wouldn't fall into German hands. It was held back from fully deploying on the front line, saved for the planned next year of the war that never came. But it would prove itself in the next war. We have a whole video on the BAR that you can watch later if you want. Then there was the problem of clearing trenches, and those horrific close-quarter fights that inevitably ended in hand-to-hand combat. Armies were yet again looking for ways to use machine guns for this as well. That led to what later became known as the submachine gun, or machine pistol as the Germans put it. They actually created the first submachine gun, the MP-18, chambered in 9mm. It armed their elite stormtroopers who were terrifying the Allies in rapid surprise attacks, penetrating deep into their lines. We have a whole video on them as well, so take a look on the channel if you're interested. The experience from World War I gave priority to more mobile air-cooled machine guns, and these took over after the war. They would characterize the next war with models unique for extreme rate of fire like the German MG42, or heavy destructive power like the American M2 Browning in .50 caliber. But the war of machine guns is certainly the first World War, and I honestly hope it would stay that way, without new war proving us wrong again.